everybody, it's Dre with Yourself.Podcast, and today's guest is David, and we will be discussing some issues that he has experienced with ADHD, and something I'm very familiar with is anxiety. And I'm going to try to understand if there is a correlation between the two, if some of us out there have ADHD and perhaps also have anxiety, and see if we have linked those together, see what coping skills have worked for him, for me, for you guys. If you guys like to try new ones that maybe we have not tried yet, and hopefully we can come up with some new suggestions as well. David, thank you so much for taking your time out tonight and doing this project with me.
Absolutely.
I hope that it goes well. I hope that we have a smooth discussion. And so, first thing I want to ask you is, do you feel at a, like, from what, if you had to scale it right now, 1 to 10, um, are you feeling anxious or any type of anticipation, something like that? Can you scale it where you are right now?
Just in the moment.
Yes, just in the moment.
I think I'm like at like a 6 or 7.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
I think it's like watching the Avengers when the Hulk, they asked Bruce Banner about, when do you get angry to turn in the Hulk? He's like, that's a secret. I'm always angry. Like I think I'm always at some level of anxious or I have anxiety going.
Yes.
Um, Especially like coming here preparing, thinking about what we're going to talk about. I'm always afraid I'm going to, like, I come up with a good idea in my head and I'm afraid I'm going to forget it. So you get anxious, like, oh, am I going to remember what I'm doing? Am I going to flub what I'm saying? Like I just get anxious about, anytime I go into a meeting or area where I have to present or anything, because I'm just now anxious that the worst thing ever is going to happen possible when I go to do it. It doesn't usually, but that's what sits on your head. So you kind of sit at this anxious level.
Yes. I completely understand that because I always think, am I going to be listening or waiting to talk? Because um, I too think, oh, I better remember what I'm going to say about this question or that question, or if I'm in just a regular conversation, do I have my listening face on or do I have my thinking face on? So
Yeah.
but I have read in the time that we've had to plan this meeting, read some misconceptions about ADHD in
Hmm.
adults and in kids. So like under maybe like the under of age 16 or something like that.
Right.
Um, you mention it, like I said, a struggle with anxiety. Can you help me understand what symptoms tend to affect your life the most that you believe are linked either more so to the ADHD or to the anxiety? And yeah, that question first I'd like to find out.
Yeah, that's so. So sometimes it's hard for me to know myself where the anxiety and ADHD overlap.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did one cause the other, or are they two different things? Or like, I didn't get diagnosed with having ADHD until I was in my 40s.
Okay.
As a kid, Gen X. So I'm growing up and like, oh, David's hyperactive. Oh, he can't pay attention. Oh, why won't he listen in class? Oh, he's always daydreaming. It's that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they just didn't, now they have a better understanding of it. But then it's like it's ADHD. I can't focus. And I have some dyslexia too. So you throw that all in there. And it wasn't until I kind of in my 40s I got into a new role as a manager, and that's where the anxiety. I think I've always had anxiety, but that's where it really started kicking in. And I was struggling with, work was really busy, and I was trying to, like, for the anxiety, ADHD too, but my thing was trying to remember tasks and trying to
Mm-hmm.
stay organized. Um, I'm kind of in a role. I'm a manager for a maintenance department, so we deal with a lot of emergencies all the time. So I'm good with really managing fires and jumping back and forth and juggling a whole bunch of stuff at once. But that gets exhausting after a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would start getting worried, like, oh, I'm juggling too much. Like, what am I forgetting? And I start dropping the ball and stuff because oh, squirrel here, oh, squirrel's over here. And so that's when I went and talked to the doctor, and I'm like, I think I have ADHD. I don't know, what to do about it. And so she ran me things. She's like, oh yeah, 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 you're classic ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, I couldn't sit still, so I ended up learning how to play drums, which was happy. My mom was happy about that because it was something I was always tapping and moving, and oh, here's an instrument. He can move all four of his limbs and stay busy. And so, once they got me and then got me medication for it, I started taking it at work. There was like a sudden change because people talk about like, oh, sometimes it works and it doesn't. It worked for me, like, and I kind of liken it to my mouth could keep up with my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Like before, it's like my brain would you try to talk and your brain's out thinking what you're saying, and then so I end up stuttering a lot or I end up stumbling my words because I'm trying to think. Well,
Yes.
then suddenly when I'm taking medication, all that would link together.
Mm-hmm.
And so on stressful days at work, or days that I'd get more anxiety, I would get less anxious because I know like, oh, I can keep up. Like my brain's functioning right, and I get like less anxious about it.
Oh, I see. Okay. I experienced a lot of that, except for the hyperactivity part when I was a kid. I was very, very withdrawn, very, very shy. I wouldn't even speak when the teacher would take attendance. I would just kind of slowly look over and say, I hope she notices me because I'm not going to raise my hand and say, I'm here. And some days I would go half the day and the teacher would be like, oh, I didn't know you were here today. So that's one difference that I noticed. But so
Now, do
when
you think is that part of that? Do you think that was from just did you have like a lack of self confidence in learning or like where you were at pace with the rest of the class and stuff? Because for
well,
me, I had with that inability to pay attention, I I assumed I was the only one in the world that had this, so
mhm.
I just thought I was stupid. Like,
Oh
oh, it's me. I'm just dumb.
yeah,
And so I did the same thing. I didn't speak up a lot. I didn't try to get noticed in class because I didn't want to get picked out because I figured like, oh, I'm just the dumbest person in class.
right. No, I think well, I had severe trauma happen when I was a kid, so I wanted to be invisible so that I
Uh,
wouldn't get harmed anymore. But I do remember now as an adult, I know that it was a learning disability or dyslexia because when I read anything, I have to read the last sentence first, then the middle, then go to the top, and then read the whole paragraph because I have to know the end before I can know the middle, not to be
mm,
afraid to from the start. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah.
So, um, but when I say if I create like this panel of questions for my guests, um, and I research the information, I'm so interested in because a lot of these people that I've interviewed have issues that I've never experienced or have never
Mm,
had to even known anybody that it's so I do the research ahead of time and I think wow, this is really interesting. So I try to start from the beginning. I have to cover the words so that I can read slower to process the information. But so you said you weren't diagnosed until in your 40s.
yeah.
How did that make you feel when you finally had an answer to this?
I think I just felt better. I mean, I mean, I knew as I was getting older, and this is all, pre social media really and stuff. So you
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a lot of other resources or see other people struggling with it. And I kind of always knew, like, I think I have ADHD. I mean, it's obvious. I can't sit still. Like, we sit and watch a movie, I got to get up and just, I'm like, I can't, like, it was obvious to me, but when you finally get a diagnosis, it doesn't solve the problem, but you're like, oh, okay, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
crazy. It exists. This is what I'm dealing with. And then nice being able to get a medication that works. I was kind of lucky. I can get a low dose. The first one worked. I know other people that have to go through different products, different medications before they finally find something that works for them. So I was kind of lucky that first thing out of the bag like that works. I'm like great. But it helped me. And then it's interesting too because my kids all suffer from various degrees of this too. My son has the ADHD side of it. My kids all suffer with different versions of anxiety and all that, and so it's helped. And my wife is really good about. So I'm bad about like digging into too much detail heavy research
Mm-hmm.
because it's like that ADHD brain. My eyes, I just gloss over. It's hard for me. She can do a ton of it, and then we can talk through it. But it helped us as our kids got older, and I started seeing these symptoms show up. Talk to them and help them to see therapists and help them start to understand what they're going through, so they didn't have to go through the same things I did. For years,
Right.
40 years going through and not knowing and not having an idea of how to deal with it, other than my own little tricks that I'd come with myself.
Right. Right. Because that's the same thing that happened to me. Because I'm also Gen X. I I didn't understand. I didn't even know what anxiety was either. Until one day, and I had been in therapy. I think I started therapy when I was like 17 or 18 years old, and was in and out, all the way up until I probably gave up in my late 20s, I believe, um, maybe early 30s. And my husband said, maybe you need to talk to somebody, because you tend to your mind is constantly racing. You can't sleep. Like you said, you can't sit and watch a movie because you wanted to do all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get very angry and irritable because I couldn't channel whatever it was I was feeling into something that was bigger than me, that I couldn't overcome, or overcome the task, or obsess about that task.
Right.
So
Yeah, I'm lucky. My wife is very understanding. I've known her for. I mean, we were friends for very long time before we got married, and so she has a couple things like you said. Like when I start like that anxiety or I can't, I'll start getting grumpy, and she'll
yeah.
just say, "We're a little grumpy, aren't we?" And it's like my trigger or my sign now that I get that, and I'm like, all right, I need to
Hmm.
start thinking about. Or we'll sit there and she'll just and I'm tapping because I'm
Hmm.
drumming on my legs. I'm doing something, and she'll just put her hand on my leg because I don't realize like I'm shaking the entire table as I'm
Right.
sitting there. She just does that, and I can try to calm down again, because it's involuntary. It just comes and I don't think about it.
That's interesting because my husband does the same to me. Like I'll be sitting there and I'll have a pen in my hand and I'll just be doing this all the time, or I'll be clicking, or I need a fidget toy, or I am shaking my leg, and he'll say, "Are you anxious right now?" And I'll think, "No, why?" And it's something like subconscious that you're doing. And he's like, "Well, you're shaking again, or your hands are shaking." Just I could be sitting there and my hands are just shaking
Yeah.
all the time. And that's my cue to be like, "Oh, I don't need to be nervous. I don't need to be
Mhm.
anxious. I'm going to save space. I can calm down."
Yeah.
And then, like you said, lucky for me, I found a doctor, uh, that was a psychiatrist that was willing to do a 2 to 3 hour assessment on me, and finally figured out, I believe you need these medications because I believe they're going to help. And it was almost like night and day.
Yeah.
Started the medications, after they give it, a week or two to get into your system and everything. And it was like the world became a different place for me. And
Yeah.
so, one of the,
Someone asked So someone asked me one point, it's like, what was the difference? And I said, it's like for me, with or without glasses. It's like living
mm,
your life without glasses and seeing the world blurry, and then you put the glasses on, you're like, oh, this is how most other people see.
yeah, yeah.
Then you take the medication, and you're like, oh, this is what neurotypical people must feel like. This is a lot, a lot more normal.
This is what it feels like to not be afraid 24/7, And I had a therapist who had asked me, what how would you feel if tomorrow you woke up and the anxiety was gone? What would that feel like? And I thought, I have no clue of who I would be, because
I
that
Yeah.
anxiety, it was, your brain starts to form when you're probably, well, I'm assuming, I've never been a mom. I'm not a deep dive researcher on embryos or anything like that, but I assume once you start to develop in the womb, from that point forward, your brain doesn't stop developing until I believe it's like the age of 24 or 27, something young like
And
that.
in 20s is where it finally kind of stops. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you are brought up with certain symptoms, your brain has been already wired that way. And not everybody has the same wiring, going on. And so when you have
Right.
the flare of anxiety or the flare of ADHD, somebody who doesn't have it might be looking at you like, what's going on,
Right.
And
Right.
it was tough for my husband at first because I didn't know what was going on. He didn't either. And so I what I did was one day when I was getting ready to go to a therapy session, and going to a therapy session always got me anxious because I knew I
Mm-hmm.
was going to have to talk about things that I didn't want to remember. I didn't feel comfortable talking about, but I had to let it out. So I started writing all these feelings that I was having, just the way I was feeling. I just all these words. And so I took it to him and I said, "Hey, this is what I feel every time I come to the office, and probably 4 to 5 times out of the week." And he looked over the list and he said, "This is an anxiety attack, a panic attack. Do you get shortness of breath? Do you feel the lump in your throat? Do you feel your mind racing?" And I was just like listening to a story I had never heard before. And so um, I did a little bit of reading about how ADHD can sometimes carry shame, anxiety, like we've been discussing, or rejection sensitivity. Have you ever felt any of those feelings throughout your
Uh,
life?
yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of the shame and all that comes from, and I wonder if it's kind of the same with anybody who's on the spectrum of being neurodivergent.
Mm-hmm.
So, you when you start realizing like I'm not like everybody else in the class, or I think differently, or I look at things differently, or I'm processing different, you just kind of realize like I'm different. And I think that kind of brings about some shame because you think that that's bad. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
different, so I'm bad. No, like I said, I didn't do well in school all the way up through high school. Graduated, I barely struggled with getting a C, getting out of high school,
Mm-hmm.
and it was and a lot of it was I didn't speak up and advocate for myself because I thought I'm just not like everybody else. I'm dumb and all that. And it took me a while. I got into college, did much better when I kind of could focus on what I wanted to do. But like, yeah, the shame is there. I mean, that's definitely part of it. And you saying the rejection, I think that that's a big part of it too. And I think it's kind of along the same lines. You're just afraid, like you want to be like everybody else. Like
Mm-hmm.
kids in high school, that's typical. You're just trying to fit into some crowd.
Right.
And when even you're the crowd that you're fitting into, you're even on the outside of that. Like I was always the jokester.
Mm-hmm.
That was my role. I was a comedic value in any group. So I always figure like I'm not gonna be the smartest, I won't be the fastest, I'm not the strongest, but I can try to be the funniest. So I
Yep.
was always the one that was gonna be weird, tell jokes, or just do something bizarre that makes everybody laugh that would probably hurt myself. But at least that was kind of my role in that group, and that's how I tried to stay, you know, relevant or connected to any group I was in.
That was
I
like your
didn't realize I
coping
was doing
mechanism.
it.
Yeah, your
Yeah,
coping mechanism. Yeah.
even with my family and all that. And I think it wasn't until much later in life that I realized, like, oh, that was me coping. That was me
Mm-hmm.
trying to mask and find something that I could fit in with, and so I
Right.
didn't get rejected or I didn't get pushed out by everybody.
Right. Right. And I think too, it's like you carry this sensitivity, like you said, you were like the jokester, in working with that defense mechanism. I think that carries a mask. That's basically masking everything that you do. And do you ever find yourself like taking the mask off when you're by yourself and feeling like, oh, I don't have to mask right now? Like, I know you're an artist, and that's how we met. And I'm so glad that we met that way because art has saved me in so many ways since I was a kid. So, do you feel like with your art, that you can take the mask off and kind of show yourself through your art?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, definitely I think I'm actually, when I get by myself, I get even more bizarre and weird. And I find it, so, like, so Robin Williams was somebody I always
Mm-hmm.
related to
Mm-hmm.
ever since I, started watching him as Mork and Mindy and stuff, because I would see him do all this stuff and I'm like, that's how my brain thinks. Like, I tell people having ADHD for me is like grabbing a radio, like an FM radio, and just turning the dial back and forth constantly. So you're just floating through all these, you're just hearing bits of songs and floating back and forth. And it's
Right.
like my brain's firing off. And so seeing Robin Williams be able to just be himself and just let his mind go wherever, I find when I get by myself, I'm more like that. And I
Mm.
always feel like if I'm doing that in a group setting, I'm going to freak people out because they're
Yeah.
going to like, what is he on? What is he smoking over there?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
but with my art, and I think that's why I connected to cartooning and all that too. I found like I can do some bizarre stuff with my art and just have fun with it and do whatever I want without having to have an expectation. It was kind of my outlet. I'm like, I'm just going
Right.
to play with this, and do things, and I can just be more of myself, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, and I feel that too because I also am a screenwriter, and I found that when I create these characters, they all have a piece of my characteristics, which I call my alter egos.
Mm-hmm.
And I at first when I started to write, um, I was like, whoa, this guy's really scary, because they're all thriller screenplays. And so they all have some form of, not necessarily superpower, but in in a mental health kind of way, it kind of is like a superpower because they use their weakness to empower themselves to be the strongest person, the smartest person in the room, the
Mm-hmm.
less feared or the most feared in the room, and instead of the other way around. And so it comes out that way. And in my art, I found it different to where it's colorful and bright and meaningful and depth, where you can see that I am sort of full of life, but I don't know how to uh, word it in a non-violent way.
Right, right.
Yeah. So, um, but how do you think that your one thing that I wanted to ask you now that we're talking about creativity, how do you think that the ADHD helps you to be hyper focused or creative? And I know you kind of mentioned that with your cartoons a little, but can you go a little bit deeper on that?
Yeah, yeah. So it's funny because sometimes my hyper focusing will be in the wrong. So I like to hyper focus on. So I'll step back. My wife and I were talking recently, and in kind of when she researched, she found this term failure to start. Like there's a like sometimes with ADHD and some of these things, and I like I said, I've seen that in my kids having the same problem, and I will hyper focus on the preparation of doing the thing. So like I put out my first coloring book. I probably spent 5 months researching how to do it, what formatting I should do, all this stuff, which I probably could have done in 1 month. But I
Yeah,
spent 5 months hyper focusing on all this detail to make sure that when I put it out, I was going to do it properly.
right.
And finally, like what got me to go at the end of that, I had a friend of mine saying, "Why don't you just do it? Like if it doesn't work, you can just do it again. Like it doesn't have to be perfect." And I'm like, "You're right. Like I have this excuse. And so the hyper focusing can be good. So I also worked on a couple years ago. I worked on a card game.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we were coming down to crunch time, being able to hyper focus, the anxiety feeds into this. I have this deadline, and then I hyper focus on being able to really sit there and delve into the art and do a lot of stuff. And the hyperactivity, I think, for me helps me jump um, from design to design. Like I can work through my designs and getting to my final design pretty quickly because I just work fast. I just learned to work quickly. If I sit there and try to like I'd really love to get into oil painting,
Mm-hmm.
but oil painting takes so long. When I've
Yes.
tried it, it drives me batty. Like I
Mm-hmm.
want to be done and move to the next thing. So like doing hyper detailed work or stuff that takes a long time doesn't work for me. When I go into Procreate and I'm doing cartooning or art, I can work fast, and that leans into the ADHD because then I can just burn through this design out of this one. I can go back and forth between things I like. It helps a lot.
I wondered about that. I wondered about the instant gratification because writing a script, and I can understand how you said when you started your coloring book, you did all this research because maybe you were worried you wanted to do it perfect as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just letting it flow, letting it gain its traction, learning as you go. But and I can totally get that too. But and I've noticed that with my writing, I don't get instant gratification because I have a process, and it starts out literally pen and paper. Then I have to write the idea down. Then I have to break it down into an outline. Then I have to character create, and then I have to go into the software and write it in the industry format. But then I found when I started with art, I thought, whoa, I can finish this in 3 or 4 hours. And I have this
You're right.
instant, gratification that it's done. I can move on to the next thing. Whereas a script may take me anywhere between 3 to 6 months to finish. And I'm the
Right.
only one seeing the progress. And it's almost as if when you're doing your art, do you feel that not only is it instant gratification, but that you receive that gain and reward also quickly? Like you can post your art on social media
Yeah.
and get that instant, hey, that's a great job, you did really good on this one, I like that. Do you feel that as well?
I do, and I think I felt that more to begin with. So it was like a few years ago. I did the teapot a day. I did
Mm-hmm.
that challenge.
I
So the
remember
entire
that.
year I did that, and then I skipped a year. Then the year after that, I did a monster every day. And so I think at the beginning of both those projects, especially when I was going through the monsters, like I liked getting that immediate feedback and people like, "Hey, this is great." But then kind of it became its own reward. It became its reward, like, "Hey, I've stayed focused on this task, and I'm doing this every day." And so just doing it and posting it, whether anybody saw it or liked it at all, wasn't really as important anymore. It was that I was able to complete it and getting it done. It's like my wife jokes, like when I'm working on home projects, I'm 85%. Like I will get a project to 85% complete, and then I'm on to the next project.
Hmm.
And I never quite finish things. Like, oh, I didn't do molding around that window. I forgot to paint that trim, or
Right,
it's that
right.
kind of stuff. So having that art piece done every day and posting it, it was kind of this rewarding, like, hey, I got that done. I did something today. I did what I said what I was going to do, and I got it posted, and I'm on to the next one.
Yeah.
And that became its own reward.
Right, right. um One of another thing that I read about ADHD, which this is something that I have tried before, um, with my anxiety, but I'm not sure if you have or anything, or I'm sure you might have heard about this term called brain dumping. Have you heard that term before?
I haven't heard the term. I think I know what it is, but
Okay.
yeah. Tell me what.
So brain dumping is basically you write, like if you're having a moment where you're feeling like you're thinking about 10 different projects that you want to complete, um, and like you said with your book, you wanted to do every single research so you can get it out perfectly instead of just starting and doing it and working through the progress and letting the uh, um, be patient with the progress. And what is it that we always say as artists? um, uh,
Trust the process.
Trust the process. Yes. And instead of trusting the process, what you do is you just take your phone or whatever you keep your notes, whatever, however you keep notes, and you just literally write down every single idea that you have in your head. No matter if it's, and it's not in order. You don't number it. You don't put it in an orderly fashion. You just write it all over the paper. I'm thinking about pets. I'm thinking about the dog. I'm thinking about groceries. I'm thinking about art. I'm thinking about this. Have you ever tried that method before?
I I have. I mean, not purposely, but I think it's kind of what I do anyways. So I've had a horrible memory forever, and I don't know if this is an ADHD thing or it's just my own bad memory
Mm-hmm.
or long-term memory, especially. So, well, I get used to writing almost everything down, or when I'm thinking through. So there's a couple of bigger projects that I want to work on coming in the future, and so I will have moments where my brain clicks into gear. One of them is a medieval like horror story,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'll be driving down the road, and suddenly like I start thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, it'd be cool if I did this with the character. So I will turn on my notes app or turn on a voice recording and just talk to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Said, okay, remember this, and I will just, and I have a dictation, one of the apps that dictates for me or does dictation. So when I talk into it, I can get it to print out everything, so I can go back and edit it.
Right.
Or like at work, I learned I have between post-it notes and notebooks, and like I write everything down when it comes to mind, because it's kind of that one of the things that makes me anxious is trying, like we were talking about, like trying to, oh, I need to remember this so I can tell somebody, or I need that. Well, if I write it down, I become less anxious because I know, like, oh, I don't have to try to remember this later. I've
Right.
got it recorded somewhere.
Right.
And I have like sketchbooks of just where I've just sat there and, yeah, I guess that's what it is, brain dumping. I've just thought about different projects and things, and I just make notes and draw pictures and stuff of just whatever, just to get it captured somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know that when you become in that moment, and maybe you can explain this to me, if the hyper focus is the same as brain dumping, or is hyper focusing more as you're going to take one task and do like your coloring book, learn everything you can about it before you actually even start it?
I don't know. I think they're kind of tied together. It's like my hope, like I say, like, so I'll be driving home and I just start thinking about something or a project that I want to do. And I become hyper focused to it, was where I'm like in my head, I'm picturing characters. I know what they look like. I know what the landscape looks like. I know the setting. Like my brain starts coming out with all these details
Mm-hmm.
of the thing that I want to create. And that's why I have to record it or do something to capture it, because I start, it's almost like you start to have a panic attack. I start
Right.
panicking, like either I got to pull over and write this down, or I need to record it, because if I wait 20 minutes till I get home, I'm going to lose some of this, because it's all hitting me now. And sometimes it's just not, like, it's not purposeful. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mean for all this to hit, or I didn't mean for all this to happen, but suddenly my brain is engaged and it says, hey, let's think about this over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I wasn't expecting that. Thanks a lot.
So it comes more so to the forefront of your mind to kind of put everything on the back burner. But what you're thinking about is really, oh, I've got to create this character. I've got to this. I've got to that. Because that I've realized I do, um, especially if I'm drawing something, if I'm sketching something, I then remember, oh, I remembered this one character has this color hair, or I did, and so I have to, like, on a side note, write it over, write it down, and so it's interesting that it sounds like, I'm not trying to self diagnose here, but it kind of sounds like our brains kind of do work similarly. However, um, do you think that it comes from anything that happened during your childhood, or do you think that it was just, it just kind of came, it just, like you said, because I know I have a younger cousin who was hyperly active, very hyper as a kid, constantly looking for the attention, constantly looking for to perform something to entertain the rest of the family. And they tried gymnastics, they tried art, he became an artist after a while. But they tried so many things to keep him active, but he was even more super active after coming home. It was almost like a recharge to the charge of the battery that was already full. So,
Right.
do you think that it came or stemmed from a childhood, either trauma or something that you remember?
I think so. And so I never thought about this before. And it's kind of the as bad as social media can be sometimes, and places like TikTok, and people complain about it. At the same time, it introduces you to communities, and you start to see how many other people are out there kind of struggling with the same thing that you do. And so one of the things I started running across was my father was an alcoholic growing up for most of my childhood.
Okay.
And so when I started hearing people talk about growing up in a family with an alcoholic parent, or someone that you thought was absent, and then the doing things to reach out for all this other stuff started to kind of click.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like some of the hype. I think I've always been hyper as long as I can remember. And my mom talks about not I would climb the top of every tree and run around like she would pull her hair out trying to
Keep
get me
you,
to calm
yeah.
down. But I think there's other parts of that, and maybe it was made worse by that, or just how it presented itself. I think growing up in that kind of household, um, I think it accentuated it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so like TikTok has been one of the ones where over the last 5 or 6 years since we've been on the app, 7 years probably now.
Yeah.
I run into so many people now, and you feel more normal, or at least you find kind of your community, like
Yes.
meeting a community of other artists and people that you're about your same age, and you're like, oh, other people have these same experiences. I'm not the only one. I may not be neurotypical, but I'm not the oddball only person over here in the corner by myself doing this. Like, there's a lot of other people struggling with the same thing.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what I have found too, being on social media, expressing my art too. And we start to talk about things because you're doing your art, you start to conversate, you start to get to know one another. And you're like, wait a minute, that person has the same thing too. And I know that with me, I don't know if this has happened to you, which I'm interested in knowing, or you don't have to share this particular part, but I also grew up in um, my parents were basically kids when they got together and got married. My mom was 16. I think my dad was like 18 or 19. They had me at 18. And then I kind of grew up with them because they were teenagers still. And they had that mentality for a long time. My father got heavily into music and became a musician, and then became, or not a musician, a vocalist, and then ended
Okay.
up touring the country for many, many years of my life. So he was gone a lot. And then when he was home, he felt like he wasn't performing. So who was he? So there was a lot of anger issues. And
Mm-hmm.
then we did come from a long line of alcoholism. And my father was an alcoholic. And then my mother was also an alcoholic, and occasionally um, had problems with other substance abuse. So when you're, and they started that younger, way before I came along. So when you're born with a gene, you're more apt to, if you start, you're more apt to carry that gene forward. And that's what happened to me. I unfortunately took it upon myself to say, well, I see how they cope, and they feel much better the next day. Well, not physically, but they feel like they got their anxieties out, they got their whatever emotions out. So I went that road and became an alcoholic myself. And um, I noticed that since alcohol is an antidepressant, I got to shove all that anxiety down and be this fictional person in my mind, like the calm, the chill, the hey, everything's cool. I can get along with anybody, and I can. It doesn't matter what stage in life you are. Hey, that's your life. Be happy. Do what makes you happy. I'm totally going to accept you one way or the other. I'm like that sober now. I've been sober now. In fact, this month will be 8 years that I've been sober. And
Good.
and I think to myself, I'm still that same person, that was
Mm-hmm.
accepting, and it doesn't matter to me how you live your life, so long as you're living a safe life that won't hurt you, your partner, your family, things like that.
Yeah.
And with the things that are going on in the world right now, um, I have felt now I've relapsed one time before, and lately with the things that go on, I almost feel like I might relapse again. But I stop. I think, no, I will lose everything I've worked for up until this point, including my
Right.
marriage, because my marriage almost failed because of it. So that's why I was asking, do you think that you went into any negative um, pathways in life? Or do you think that it was just not just, I don't want to say just the ADHD, but do you think it was the ADHD kind of giving you positive space to where you could exert that energy into?
So you're mentioning it's not your dad, because I have it's kind of similar with mine. Not this, not so we grew up very did not have a lot of money, like
Mm-hmm.
lower working class. Both my parents were working their butts off. So my dad didn't travel around the country, but he worked a ton of overtime trying to earn an X money for the house. So and he had a lot, and now I see it as him having a lot of stress at work, and I think that's what fueled the alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
um, Especially as I've gotten older and moved into a management position, I'm like, oh, I understand. Like I
Mm-hmm.
understand it because I managed not to become an alcoholic, and I think growing up, I recognized what was going on, and I knew early on, like I don't know where the line is, so I know I have to stop early because I don't know where that line is where I get to have had too much. I don't have that capability, and it's been in the family for a long time, and both my brother and I kind of just shied away from it. But when you have hard days, whatever, you have alcohol to relax. I can see why this is addictive
Mm-hmm.
because being able to just kind of calm down and check out after having stressful days, especially during the pandemic. So I work in a hospital, and
Mm-hmm.
so you come home after long days at the hospital, um, drinking to try to calm down. It's very tempting to just like I'm just going to get loaded every night and just
Yes.
that's how I'm going to shut my brain off. Luckily enough, we had TikTok at that time, so
Yes.
I started running into lives and running into artists and kind of rekindled my art at that time and had another place to react, kind of uh, get that energy out, I guess.
Right. Right.
But the hyperactivity, I think, more of what the negative side has had for me for a long time. It's been hard to focus on finishing projects, or it's hard to. I'm always afraid if I get too involved with something, I will end up checking out anyways. And
Uh,
so, like putting enough confidence in myself to say I'm going to, like I have a website and stuff out, but like I'm a, I'm almost afraid of starting large projects because I'm afraid I'm going to just dump them and stop them,
mm-hmm.
and then that's very disappointing for myself that I haven't completed a big project. Like I said, I've got notebooks full of these ideas of things I'd like to do, and like I joke, I need a office assistant. I need someone to help me do the detail work because when it comes to that stuff, that's where I start checking out, and I I don't want to fail at these projects. So they sit in a book, kind of in my imagination of how great they would be if they were completed. But I think sometimes I'm afraid to start those because I don't want it to end up as as a project that didn't go anywhere.
So then procrastination plays a big part in your, even in your creativity life, in your creative life, I mean.
Yes,
Mm.
yeah, I'm a procrastinator.
So why do you think that you are you afraid of failing, or are you afraid of too much success that you may conquer the confidence that you lack to finish that big project?
I don't think I'm afraid of success. I don't. I, I'm a. I don't. I don't think I'd get there. But more of me is I think I'm just afraid that it's not going to come out how it is in my head, or that like because you have like kind of I have an overarching idea of all these things, but when it starts drilling into details and doing the rest, that it won't come out how I want it to,
Hmm.
or that at some point of it, that ADHD will get me to go look at the next project and I've left this one hanging and not done because the next shiny object is there and I got a great idea over here I want to start working on, which is always a difficult thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to balance between what you're doing.
Yeah.
When I was doing a monster a day, or as I work on these books and stuff, they're smaller. It's something I can accomplish in a day, or like this month I'm doing a challenge called Monstruary. So I've gone back to drawing a monster every day and working up towards my next coloring book that I want to work on. Well, those are short goals. It's an overall goal of 30 days, but it's really split into short goals all month long.
Right. Right.
So those to me that's accomplishable. I can accomplish that and I can get it done, and I don't feel like I failed at the project.
So you don't do you ever stop to look to think and say to yourself as a like a pat on the back or something like that that says I turn around and I look at everything that I have created, everything that I have accomplished and say I actually did not procrastinate. I actually set my mind to it, even though they were what you thought were small goals or 30-day goals or, short little, in your mind, short goals to accomplish. But then when you look back, there's this long line that you have accomplished, which is really a big project because you did 30 days of one, 30 days of another, 30 days of another, and you compile that and it equals to a year or two or however long you've done. Have you ever given yourself that kind of credit before?
I do. It's probably too far between those. But I had when I finished the first year of doing the teapots every day, and I remember finishing 365, and then a friend of mine, Lita, actually as a congratulations, sent me a teapot set, which was
Mm-hmm.
really pretty. And I ended up drawing that for the last one, and I finished that, posted it, and I cried a little bit. I'm like, I actually got this done. Like
Yeah.
when I first started it, everyone's like, "You're doing this for a full year?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." And then once you're about 4 months in, you're like, "Oh my god, this is hard." Like I'm doing this every day.
Yes.
This ends up being a grind for a while as you're getting into the rhythm of doing it. But yeah, you complete it and you look back and you're like, "Damn, I actually did that." It was the same when I put the first coloring book out. So I had all these monsters I had done for the whole year, and they were just sitting there, and I didn't know what to do with them. And someone else had done a coloring book, and I'm like, they're all in Procreate. I can just strip out the color, do some touch up, and I can actually do something with those. So when I made that first one, it was the same thing. Like you hold that in your hand, like, oh crap, like I actually made something that's physical, that
Yes.
people can get and enjoy, and it's this nice feeling of even if only 10 or 15 people ever enjoy this, I actually made something, I accomplished it. So yeah, I've had those moments, and I need to have them more often probably, but
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
there.
I think it does help you um because I do the same. I there goes time where I don't write for a long time. And mentioning our dads, I lost my father. I believe it was um, it's something in common I have with another artist, but and I'm sure you're very well familiar with. But I lost my father 3 years ago this month, and I didn't realize until TikTok has these like videos of on this day, like a memory day, you created this, or on this day this happened, and so I get those a lot. And I was in a different house, so I had a different art studio set up and everything, and I saw my dad in 90% of the videos when I was creating art. And at the time, I didn't know this. I didn't know he was suffering from dementia, and he didn't know either until I started noticing dramatic changes in his memory. He was falling a lot. And so I thought, well, we should probably take you to a neurologist and see what's going on. And it had turned out that he had had at least 3 strokes within a short time frame, but during his sleep. And one had kind of impaired his vision in one eye, but he thought it was just needing a new prescription for his glasses. And I thought, well, maybe it is. And then when we went to the neurologist and found everything out, and they told me he's right there. He's got dementia, and you're gonna have to prepare yourself at this point. Now, at that point, I felt defeated because years before, him and I had taken care of my grandmother, his mother-in-law, who had dementia to the point where she was nonverbal, bedridden. She couldn't do anything for herself. And so we took turns taking care of her because my mom had passed away. Now it's been this year will be 26 years that my mom's been gone. So him and I took the load of taking care of my grandmother. And it tried our patience so much. And then that was before I found out I had anxiety. So sitting there with an elderly person, looking out the window, watching the world zoom by, and you're just trying to get a spoonful of Jell-O into this person's little mouth, and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, and it just makes you want to explode. And then when I found out that my father had it, I didn't know, because my father and I had always bumped heads growing up. He was a perfectionist with his music. When they had me in art school, I was a perfectionist in art school. He had me play drums as a backup drummer for in case his drummers ever, So, so I learned how to play drums. I learned all of his sets, and so it was almost like I needed everything to be under my control so that nothing bad would happen, because I didn't have control over my mom's loss, And so do you think that, because you mentioned your dad passed away, correct? Am I correct in saying so?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a while. It's 21 years.
Oh,
Around.
okay,
So
okay.
it's been a while. It
Did
doesn't always feel like that long ago, but
Yeah, it never fades. It always for me at least, I've experienced that it doesn't fade. It doesn't for me, time is not a healer. I know people say with time it'll get better, but until you lose those people that are significant in your life, it doesn't seem to work that way. And when I look back at those videos and I see him in my video standing next to me, overlooking the art, and I remember him liking every single piece I made. He would make a huge deal. I love the way you did this composition, the color you used here, because art also ran in our family. And so, but during the time that I was filming that video, I thought, yes, Dad, thank you. But can you find your your escape? Can you go listen or watch your own videos that you used to perform in?
else over there.
Yeah, and remember your art, remember your craft. But now I look back and I think, oh my goodness. And then I realize that when my anxiety shows up, it comes with a bucket full of sadness, a bucket full of regret, a bucket full of why did I not enjoy that present moment, and I wonder if it's the same for you with your ADHD. Does that kind of like flow into the rivers of anxiety and things like that, and regret, or should I have enjoyed that moment more so than I remember?
I think it's always easy to look back and go, I should have enjoyed this. I mean, I, it's kind of like a nostalgia for me. It's this, this loss of, like I said, I have a bad memory. I've always had a bad long term memory. Like
Mm.
when I get from anything from elementary school, high school, even college, I can pick and choose moments, but I don't remember a lot of it. And so, um, and so I found like over the years, which what I didn't realize I was doing was kind of like low key hoarding. Like I have still a lot of toys and memorabilia and stuff from when I was a kid, and I think
I
part of
see it
that was
back
an
there.
attempt to remember all this stuff because I'm always afraid. Like I would keep concert tickets and just I have all this stuff mostly because I can look back at it and it will trigger things that I don't normally remember.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
but I but it's interesting because I've noticed ever since I was like 17 or 18, I felt like I I had a lot. I was feeling this nostalgic loss for childhood. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you remember like Cats in the Cradle, like listening to that
Yes.
song growing
Yes.
up?
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember doing that and feeling sad, but I was like 16 years old. I was like losing sad about losing my childhood and feeling nostalgic about it. I look back at it and go like, you were only 16, dude. You weren't even. Same thing like
Yeah.
super super trantological song talking about the loss of childhood, you know.
Yes.
And I remember hearing that song and I was all moved by it. And I'm like, look back, I was so freaking young. Like, what was I afraid, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is like I do that, and one of my daughters has the same kind of thing. It's I think they now call it like FOMO.
Oh, yeah.
That you're
Yeah.
like
Fear.
you don't want to miss all these things and you don't want to forget all these things because you don't want to lose these memories and as things go by you don't know what to pay attention to or what to cherish because you don't know who or won't be here tomorrow or the next day or
Mm-hmm.
uh, that is one of the things that does give me anxiety. It always kind of has. It's just as this fear of forgetting or fear of not being able to cherish or really appreciate the things that I should at the moment.
So how do you do that now? Do you pull out your phone and make a video of what's going on, or do you write it down? How do you keep
I
that
have a
record?
lot of pictures. I take a
Pictures.
lot of pictures. Thank God for digital media.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
my wife will joke. So it's kind of two things. So my wife will joke when we go out on a trip. I will take 2,000 pictures. I will take pictures of everything that I see that has any significance to me. I will take pictures of it. It's what I've actually started moving to get rid of some of these older items, like these nostalgic items and
Oh,
memorabilia. I'm
yes.
starting to pull them out, take pictures of them, and then toss them
Mm-hmm.
because I realize like, oh, a picture of it does the same of having the physical thing. But then it's funny. I have this here. It's this art journal.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing is we would go on these big vacations, and I would be always afraid that I was going to forget things from the vacation. So like we took this trip to London and England, and so what I would do is I journal in it, and then I would do watercolor
Oh,
paintings
okay. Yeah.
on the side of it. And it was my way that when I could look back at it, I find that when I'm writing something and when I'm drawing it out, it sticks better. I just remember it better. Like I've always been known when I take notes, I always like in a meeting or something, I will just take notes. Even if I never look at the notes again, by writing it out while I'm hearing it, I remember it better.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like doing this journal, we would go on a trip, and every evening I would stop and take a half an hour to sketch out a drawing of what I thought was significant for the day, and then writing out part of it, and then the trip sticks with me better, and I'm able to enjoy the trip more because I'm not anxious about like trying to remember this stuff or I want to tell somebody when I get back home about this thing. Am I going to remember how to? Well, no, I've got it now captured in this journal. I tried doing like daily journaling, and I don't have the
Yeah.
temperament for it.
Yeah.
Although I did see a trick, and I just started doing it this year. I got a calendar with a large format, so they have big squares on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So every day I will write down something that was significant that happened that day. So even if it's
Oh,
in the media, in the news, and it's a significant thing that I don't want to ever forget that, but I or write down like I went to this show or this happened today. And I just will make a little note and I've been doing it so far, and it's. I'm hoping over the course of the year I'll have something to look back at and kind of look through the year and I'm like, oh yeah, that's when I started working on this project, or that's when this happened, or that's when this person came to visit.
that's an interesting idea because I even though I cannot not say because I do feel confident in my writing. I have been recognized by the industry before. So that gave me a big, huge confidence boost in myself. But the daily journaling thing never has been an interest to me, because I think, okay, what happened today? Well, nothing. I did some art and I finished it. And then I took a nap. And I think, who's going to want to read that in 20 or 30 years? I don't have any kids. So
Right.
I think to myself, who's going to benefit from that? But you're kind of doing it I think like in a reverse way, sort of. Like you're taking things that were significant that happened elsewhere, so that they're like, oh,
Just
these are the past events that happened
right.
on that day. And I think, since you do have kids, I think that they will come to appreciate, if at any point in time, heaven forbid, something were to happen to you before anybody else, and you're in another realm, dimension, or paradise, or whatever you believe in, but and they're left here on this planet, they will have something so significant, so positive, that you literally left a mark on the earth, and that makes me proud to know that there are people who have these struggles, and don't give themselves enough credit. But then I listen to their story and I think, but yes, you do. You have success already. You have maybe not the success that your mind says, this is perfect success. To me, this is perfect success. But you've made these steps of success along the way that other people have not ever even attempted to climb those steps. And so I'm glad that this doesn't affect you too much in the sadness part, because it doesn't sound like you suffer too much from depression. Am I correct, or am I wrong?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think in the same way. I mean, I certainly go through sad phases, and I think the anxiety gets to the point where I will stop creating for long periods of time because of I like paying attention to the daily news and absorbing
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
shuts down kind of that creative process.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then after I haven't been creating or drawing for a while, sitting back down to start up again, you're like, what are you doing? I can't draw. Like, this sucks. I don't know what I'm doing. What am I? And so that all kind of goes there. But I don't. It doesn't go into like the clinical depression. I think I go through the normal phases that everybody would. Um, but I think it's less depression, but more anxiety, which will come up and kind of start shutting my brain down.
Yeah.
And I've had to
Yeah.
learn ways to try to break out of those cycles, or like I will just take a few days off, even to just not pay attention to the news or no social media. I'm like, I
Right.
know this is all crappy out there. I know the worst is probably happening. I'm just going to ignore that.
Mm-hmm.
Or like right now, we're back in the weather cycle where we start enjoying sunrises. So
Mm-hmm.
where I work, we're right off of Lake Washington. So I'm lucky enough, like I can drive to work, and I can, right before I have to go into work, I can sit there and watch the sunrise and enjoy that for 10 minutes and kind of like mentally reset before I go into like, oh, it's going to be a stressful day, but I can sit here and just kind of center myself for a few minutes before I go in. So I think it's reminding ourselves to do that, like just kind of cut off and try to, center or find something that you enjoy that helps everything else, shut your brain off to everything else that's going on. You can just kind of focus.
Something that's bigger than what you are, correct? Something
Right.
that's, yeah. Yeah. And that's very interesting, because I try to challenge my guests, when I have them on, regardless of the challenges that we discuss. And I like to challenge my guests to try to improve even just an inkling of a thought for that week. You don't have to hold any accountability to me. You don't have to check back in with me and say, oh yeah, Dre, I did that thing and it made me feel this way or that way. But one thing that I in our conversation, I've thought, what kind of challenge could I give you, David, that would seem to help you out? Because you seem on the outside kind of like I want to compare a little bit about of myself, because I try to uh, well, I am a professional masker. Okay, I have done it all my life, and I even have on my bio I am an anxiety connoisseur, because I have been through all of the anxiety issues and paths and ways to avoid it, ways to conquer it, but don't really want to conquer it. And I'm afraid, and I sit in my sadness and I sit in my anxiety. And thank goodness for modern medicine that has helped me, because some of us actually do need the medication. And like you said, you may be on the lowest dose, and I'm not one to um, activate for it or against it, because I'm no medical professional, of course. But um, I guess my challenge for you in getting to know you a little bit better in this conversation would be to maybe find the goodness that in your childhood that you remember about your father, that you could see where he um, struggled with his stress, struggled with that. If you could, in your the way you journal or your calendar that you keep in track of, if you could take a week or just a couple of days, however long you want to do this, you don't have to do it the whole week, but at least take one day where you can kind of think, how would my dad have pictured me at this age, seeing me at this age, being around right now?
Right.
What would give me his own pat on my back?
Mm-hmm.
And say, and write that down, so that you can keep that long-term memory, and think of it as, maybe if we share that moment together in that time frame, both of you would equally lower your stress level and have a peaceful moment for the both of you. So if you could take on that challenge just for one day, or even maybe every day this week, however you want to do it, I think maybe you'll find that you don't need to identify yourself with, my long-term memory, I suffer so much from it, because you continue to feed that into your brain. And feeding that into your brain is like typing in on a monitor, and you're typing a story. The monitor is your brain.
Mm-hmm.
The keyboard is what you're telling your brain. So if you're on there typing, I am a great person, the
Mm-hmm.
monitor is going to read, I am a great person, right? And so
Right.
the challenge, I guess, the point of that challenge is, I want you to remember your dad, since it's been 20 plus years. Try to remember him and you having a peaceful moment where you weren't stressed, and do whatever it is that you think that he would be proud of, and write that moment down, and try to keep that memory with you, because I believe that they're always with us, regardless
Mm-hmm.
if we something stays with us, their characteristics, their looks, their personality, something that they added to our lives. And so whether it became a negative thing or a positive thing, we still took that from our parents. And
Right.
I think that
Right.
some
Right.
of us who are trying to work through the negative need to remember they were in a learning process themselves. Maybe they didn't learn how to cope. Maybe they didn't have coping skills. Maybe they didn't come from a household that talked about mental health issues. My parents surely didn't come from that.
Same with mine. Yep.
Yeah. So I just want to challenge you to try that out and see how you feel. and see if it might trigger other memories of your father that were positive, instead of remembering him as a stressful, hardworking is good, but when it comes to where it affects you mentally, physically, where it's going to affect you in a negative way, then yeah, obviously it's going to come out in worse ways. But
Yeah.
if you'd like to take that challenge out or try it,
Yeah.
you know,
It's a good idea. Yeah. It's
um,
something certainly good to think about.
yeah. And I really have appreciated your time tonight and enjoyed speaking with you about the subject. What I'm planning to do later on in the year is kind of do a checkup on my previous guests and see how they're
Mhm.
doing, and hopefully I can include you in that group later on in the year, maybe towards the end of the year, and see how you're doing, see how you've managed or have learned to manage your ADHD a little bit better, or the anxiety a little bit better, or I was given one tip also by a therapist is to name my anxiety so that I don't identify it as part of myself. And so
Uh-huh.
so
Yeah, yeah.
so I wonder if that could also be another challenge for you to name your ADHD. And I had to think and think and think, and I finally came up with, I said, aha, Lord Panic has entered the chat. so so now I know that when Lord Panic enters the chat, now I can have a discussion with my anxiety
Mhm.
and say, wait, okay, is this just my thought, or is this really happening? Is the world really crumbling down? Am I moving 100 miles an hour, and is everybody else around
Right.
me moving at slow motion? And I'm like, there's a fire, people. Let's get on this. And so
Yeah,
now,
naming it and be able to separate it from yourself. Yeah, that's a good important thing to do. So you don't, because there is, like I said, there's a lot of shame and all that, the negativity tied to it because you're tying it to directly to yourself.
yes.
You can separate it. That, yeah,
Yeah. So that would be another challenge for me to ask you to
yeah,
try to do, and hopefully it can start to your gap might be this right here, but maybe naming it might start to, you know and
hmm
then that way
hmm
you can recognize it and be like, "Oh, I don't need to fear because I know Lord Panic is here. I know you're here, but we got something else that we got to take care of right now." I
yeah.
will I will earn my panic attack later on tonight. I will try to do that later on tonight. So, but I really want to thank you for your time, your efforts tonight,
Absolutely.
your
It's been
vulnerability,
a pleasure.
your vulnerability to open yourself up and help those who may be struggling with the same life issue that you are struggling with.
Yeah.
And I wish you nothing but luck, or wish you nothing but the best with your creative ideas. I have seen you go through your creative ideas. I have seen your accomplishments. I have been proud of your accomplishments. As you know, we've been friends too for years on TikTok. We've worked on
Yeah.
projects together. And I believe that um, you have become known well around the world globally, because we have friends who live around the world and have seen your work. So that in
That's
itself is a
true.
huge
That's true.
success. So I want you to think about those things, and hopefully it will help you to not feel so much of the um, procrastination, the disappointment in saying, "Oh, I didn't accomplish that big," but you did accomplish this, and you did accomplish, and you were noticed by people all over the world. So I want you to be proud of yourself for that, and I certainly am proud of you for that. And
Oh, thank
so
you.
thank you so much for your time today. And like I said, I wish you nothing but the best. And I hope to check in with you later in the year and find you in even a more happier space in your mental space. And yeah, thank you for joining Brace Yourself. And
You're welcome. And yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah, and if you'd like, spread the word about the podcast. We're always looking for for guests and things like that. So, and if you ever need to come back sooner than I call on you, more than welcome to come back and discuss any other issue that you might feel that you need to kind of vent out on, and we can research that and look for other coping skills that maybe we haven't tried before.
All right, that sounds good.
Sounds good. All right, thank you, David, so much. I hope you have a great rest of your night, and I wish your family well too.
All right.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, we'd like to thank David for being our guest today and opening up about his ADHD and his anxiety and being so vulnerable and open and honest with his coping skills, with his vulnerability. We'd like to extend the invitation for anyone else who would like to become a guest. There are a few ways you can get in contact with us. You can join our channel on TikTok, and that is at Yourself.Podcast. You will be able to see the same little icon that is shown on our YouTube page with me and my little puppy writing down the word anxiety. That picture, profile picture, is across the board, TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. So if you'd like to get a hold of us, you can DM us on those two other platforms, or you can email us at braceyourmentalhealth@gmail.com. We're very grateful for all of our guests. This is actually our 15th episode, so it's a little bit of a celebration for us. And we'd like to continue to help those in need, or just be a lending ear, or try to help you to research for new coping skills for your life challenges. We appreciate you all. Again, I'm Dre, and this is Brace Yourself.Podcast, and that's a wrap.